Yeah, well, quite simply, modern slavery is where one person controls another person by exploiting a vulnerability.
It's as simple as that in many ways, but it comes out in all sorts of ways.
It can come out in as a form of labour exploitation, domestic servitude, human trafficking, criminal exploitation, sexual exploitation, and there are many, many subheadings in that category.
Now, you work very closely with the Mothers Union. They're working very closely with the Children's Society, and a recent report has highlighted the level of this problem with young people as victims.
Yes, and we've been very fortunate. I mean, Mothers Union, Lichfield Diocese Mothers Union, absolutely pioneering in their field. So it's a privilege to say that I work alongside them and that they actually fund my role. And Mothers Union as a whole, yes, work very closely with the Children's Society. And the work that they do, again, is stunning, particularly around distracting young people and keeping them safe because, as you said, a report that came out at the beginning of April from the Modern Slavery Helpline, it's their annual assessment, and it showed us that sexual exploitation was up by 25% on 2019, with nearly a quarter of those potential victims being children. And criminal exploitation was up 42%, with a fifth of those victims being minors. So it's so important. And then when they actually broke the figures right down, they were able to tell us that 10% of all calls made last year were referenced to children and some form of exploitation, which was up from 7% on 2019.
Is this a new twist in this evil trade, or is it just we're beginning to uncover it?
I don't think it's a new twist. I've been saying this quite a lot over the last month. Do you remember back in the 70s, Chris? Although you're not old enough, are you?
I am, sadly.
But remember the Charlie Says campaign, where Charlie says, "Don't go with strangers."
Yeah.
Charlie says, "Don't take sweets." You know, all of that stuff that we were taught when I was a child of the 70s. You know, it's very much the same vein today. It's just taken a different context. Whereas where it was, you know, strangers on the street, now it's strangers online. I think that, you know, it's not that this is anything new particularly. It's maybe changed, switched up a bit, where it's gone from children being abducted for sexual exploitation to now including running drugs and forced begging. And
the phrase you go under is hidden in plain sight. So we see it, but we don't often notice it.
It can be right in front of our faces. I did a modern slavery training session this morning and had people from all over the UK this morning, Mothers Union members, but also a lot of NHS staff now attending. And that's the one thing that they all are able to say in hindsight, having sat in on my session, they now recognise that potentially they've come across victims themselves, but because they didn't know what the signs were, because they wouldn't have known how to spot those signs, then I recognised it was right in front of their eyes.
And obviously one of the ways by which people can become more aware is come along to one of your sessions, and I know you've got a whole load all on Thursdays at different times.
Yes.
And people can go to tctogether.org in order to find out more, can't they?
Absolutely. And if they go there, they can just click on the link and maybe we'll be kind enough to pop it onto your radio page on Facebook.
We will.
But the dates are there. We run one a week and you can choose whichever one suits your need. You can come on more than one if you want to. We do get people coming back to refresh, or they just find that they found it so fascinating that they want to hear it again. They recommend it to their friends and family. The numbers are really increasing on the sessions now, which is fantastic, thanks to good people like yourselves promoting it. And we've got sessions running right up until summer. Then we'll take a break in August and then we'll start again in September.
And so what are the kind of things you're covering in the sessions that help people just open their eyes up, take the blinkers off?
So we break it down into 4 key areas, really. We go into the background of why we believe it's important for us to talk about the subject now. We talk about where you might find victims here in the United Kingdom. So we're not just talking about abroad. We break it down into how would you spot those signs? And then we talk about where to report those suspicions.
Now, you're part of a faith-based organisation, multi-faith-based, but it's the Church of England in Lichfield that's employing you via Transformative Communities Together. Yeah. And the church has been pioneering for many years. In fact, when I chatted to one of the colleagues at Mothers Union a while back, and I was sort of saying they're all about tea and cakes, and she says, yes, we do hospitality well. But they've been a pioneering organisation for many, many years in terms of changing important things in our society.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for me, you know, having now been working with the Mothers Union for the last year or so, you know, they are people have this idea that they are tea and cake, and as Helen rightly said to you, they do hospitality so well. However, it's so much more. The impact that they have they're unsung heroes almost. The impact that they have on their local communities is huge. You know, they work with prisons, they work with young people, teenage parents, incredible work being done. And so I work for Transforming Communities Together, which was a charity set up in 2014 by the Church of England and the Church Urban Fund. And they, you know, within that multi-faith organisation, we campaign for social justice in many areas, but Mothers Union touches all of those areas.
Are there many like you around the country, or are you a lone voice in this modern slavery campaigning?
There are not many. I think I am the only one that's employed in this particular role. There are many volunteers across the UK doing similar work to me, but obviously when you're volunteering, how much time you can commit to a particular subject can vary. So I've been offering my learning and my expertise to those that you know require some assistance.
Right, I was just thinking in terms of just this awareness. I'm just overwhelmed by these numbers, to be perfectly honest, as no doubt you are and others are as they hear them. And especially when it is the most vulnerable, and it is always the most vulnerable, but it's like those who are enslaving people are going for the more and more vulnerable as time goes by and digging deep down into our society. Yeah,
and I think that's a really important point that you highlight there, Chris, and as I was talking about this morning to the people that were in my session, that actually we have to be really mindful. What does it mean to be vulnerable in 2021 in the United Kingdom? That often when we think about modern slavery and human trafficking, we're thinking about people coming from abroad, and that's not specifically the case. With what we've seen happen with the pandemic, with the social landscape changing, financial landscape and economic landscape changing, we're seeing more and more people that live here in England using food banks across the United Kingdom. And so when people are in that position of financial risk, if you like, or they're under the pressures of trying to provide for their family, that's when people can take big risks. It only takes somebody to come alongside somebody and say, would you like to earn some money? I was going to say to you, has COVID locked down slavery at all? I'm guessing from what you're saying, no, because those who are exploiting people are evil and clever enough to adapt in their evil. Yeah, these exploiters, they're master manipulators. You know, they are, if you sat down with them, they'd be the most charming, intelligent, witty people you could meet, and they exploit that in themselves. So they will set up their exploits in what looks like legal terms. So they will set up legal businesses to operate their illegal businesses within that. But staying on the subject of vulnerability, you know, with people, families that are maybe on a lower income, that are being affected because they will take loans from people that are offering to lend them money, and then when they can't make the repayments, they're being told that they need to do a certain task. If they refuse to do that task, then there's the threat of violence. So that's one way that people are being exploited currently, which is why there's a lot of work being done around the area of loan shark, but also with people that have now found themselves suddenly who would never have normally been insecure or in a position of instability with their finances. Those people now, you know, are at risk because it only takes, say, you know, a friend of the family that's involved in crime, because they usually say that these exploiters are usually friends of the family, that you're unaware that they are a criminal person, will come along and potentially exploit that person.